Vom Stresspreneur zum Chillpreneur. Lerne entspannt erfolgreich zu sein. Weil Stress kein Statussymbol und Burnout kein Standard sein darf.
Good morning to another episode of this podcast. And today I have a wonderful guest again. And before we dive right into your 6 vacations this year, hi, Debbie. Great to have you on board.
Thanks, Patricia. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, so maybe there are some people who do not know you yet. So maybe you could share a little bit of insight. Debbie, who are you and what are you doing? And how do you look so relaxed?
Okay, well, I'll start with who I am. I'm Debbie Collard, and I'm a leadership coach, executive coach, and leadership development person. And that came from a very long career that I've had up to this point in business in the United States. And it started out when I graduated high school. And I left home in the Midwest, grew up in farm country, left home, joined the military. And so I was in the U.S. Air Force for 5 years. Then I started working for the government for a couple years. And then I got into aviation, not something I ever expected to do, but a job opportunity presented itself. So I started working for McDonnell Douglas. And I did all kinds of roles there. They were eventually bought by Boeing. And again, I continued to stay and do all kinds of roles. I eventually retired 30 years later. And when I started there, I was going to stay maybe 2 years and then move on to the next thing. But 30 years later, I retired as an executive from Boeing. And I did lots of different roles. Business operations, program management, supplier management, quality, business excellence, you name it. I was probably dipped my fingers into it at some point. And I liked that. I liked the variety and the constant changing landscape and learning new things. So I stayed there for, like I said, 30 years. But it was always something new. People would ask me, they'd say, well, how did you stay at the same boring company for 30 years and do that? Well, it wasn't the same boring company, and what I was doing changed all the time. So I loved that. I loved going up through the management ranks and being a leader, although I would love to tell you, Patricia, I had this grand scheme and this plan, and I was going to do, this step.
I was about to ask you, did you have a plan or was it more like step by step on the way?
Of my pants. I kind of did well, this sounds interesting. Let's go try this for a little while.
Okay.
And that was my plan. It was largely driven by life circumstances, I would say.
Okay.
Right. So things that were going on in my life along the way in that 30-year career, I had 2 marriages. I'm still in the second one. I had twin daughters. And I got both my bachelor's and master's degrees. So while I was doing all the rest of that stuff.
That sounds like a lot of things to do, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. And throughout it all, I really didn't have a plan, right? I had plans in pieces. So okay. I would have a plan for okay, now I want to achieve this. And so then I would set off to achieve whatever that plan was, and then the next plan. But I didn't have an overarching career plan.
Okay.
When I retired, I decided I was going to give myself 1 year off to just be.
Cool. Be. How was it? I mean, after having such a great career and really having all these adventures and challenges and learnings and lessons, how did it feel for you to have a year to simply be?
It was wonderful. And the hardest thing I would say was people have described me my whole career as driven. I don't see myself as driven, but that's how they describe me.
I also see you as driven, as far as I know you.
I would describe myself as responsible. So I'm the oldest child of 6 children. And so I always had to be responsible, right? I had to, you be the good girl, you help mom out, you do all these things, right? So I was always working at doing those things. And I just thought this was how life was supposed to be. It wasn't until in my 20s, I got the opportunity to live in Germany for a couple of years, actually.
Which is great. So if you want, we can still switch to German.
I would say I'm rusty at best on my German right now. I can understand it when I read it and when you speak it, but forming the responses, not so good at that. But anyway, and I still have friends there from the time I lived there. And I wasn't allowed to work while I was there. So I had that period in my life in my 20s of 2 years without working. So that got me used to what does it feel like to just be, right? To just live and exist and be. Fast forward to when I retired, I knew I needed something like that, some time to just figure it out, just be.
But could you enjoy the time, or was it kind of
a
inner struggle?
Oh, no. It was wonderful. I think if I hadn't had that 2 years in Germany, though, I would have struggled more with it, was my point. Because I think I already knew, okay, I know what this is going to be like. I know what's going to feel like to not have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get ready for work and rush in.
Did you usually get up at 4 a.m.?
Yeah.
I mean, Susan told me something very similar, and I'm amazed. I mean, 4 a.m. because of the kids and the work, or why 4 a.m.?
Yeah, because everything you had to get ready for the day. And then I needed to get in early because no matter what your plan was for the day, it changed by the time you got there. And so I wanted to get in and get everything organized so I could start the day calmly. So yeah, I would, and when I retired and I was making a list of, okay, what do I want differently in my life now in whatever I do next, right?
Yeah.
The number one thing was I don't want to have to get up at 4 a.m. every day.
I totally understand you.
So in that year, I was just being, I wasn't doing anything, but I was working with a coach towards the end of the year. And I said, okay, I want to figure this out. I want to figure out like, I want to have a plan because I've never had a plan, right? So now I want to have a plan. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be, I want to go scale a mountain or anything like that. It just needs to be kind of, what's my life going to look like and what am I going to focus on? And through working with that coach, I decided I want to be a coach. And I had done a lot of that work in my career, but didn't have the training for it and didn't have the certifications, but I was doing it for a lot of years. And when I went to the coaching school and learned how to do this, I'd be like, oh, I've already been doing this. I know what I'm doing now. And so,
and you're really good at this, I have to admit. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I discovered in that year after retirement, I worked with the coach and he said, why? I really think you need to focus on why, your purpose. And you'll remember this from us working together, right? That your why or your purpose is really important. That's your mission, right? Why do you do what you do? And I believe my why is that because I want to help make a positive difference in other people's lives. And so, and this is how I use my skills to do it. But you asked about how I look so relaxed right now.
Exactly,
so let me
but it's great. We have enough time.
So how I look so relaxed is this. I learned in my about mid-30s, I'd say. It took me that long to figure it out. Because I'm driven, remember, everyone said I was driven. I didn't have time to take vacations.
I hear this so often. Like, I do not have the time to take some time off.
I don't have the time. People are depending on me. This isn't going to get done if I go. And then I'm just going to pay for it when I get back. I had a friend that always said, pay me now or pay me later. And what she meant by that was, I'm going to have to either just not take a vacation or I'm going to really pay for it when I get back.
Yeah.
And I thought, that kind of makes sense. It's so busy and blah, 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 blah. And then
But did you have, sorry to interrupt, did you have any struggles when it was that busy until you were something like you're in your mid-30s? Or was it just like the flow?
Yeah, no, it wasn't just flow. It was, yeah, there were always struggles, but I don't know that I could have articulated why I was having struggles, that I needed to recharge my batteries, that I needed to breathe, settle in, be me, have some me time. I was just on the hamster wheel, right? Just going round and round and round and round. And luckily, I'm very blessed and lucky in this. I did not have any significant event, medical or anything like that, that gave me a wake-up call about taking vacations, but a friend of mine did. And I was like, wow, and it was so easy to see in someone else. So if you were telling me, oh, I can't take a vacation, this and that, I would be able to see it in you and help you work through why you needed to. But looking in the mirror, that's not so easy, right? To say, we rationalize. It's like, no, I'll do it later. This will happen or that will happen. So about in my mid-30s was when I got remarried. So second marriage, and my husband had his whole life, his parents had instilled in him, you take vacations. Everybody needs vacations. And
oh, wow. So he has a totally different view on things.
And so he said, I scheduled a vacation for us. And I'm like, what? I don't know if I can get that time off work. I don't know if I can do this. And he's like, you're doing it. And so, because
that's how your first vacation, like was starting.
Yeah, that was it.
And how did it feel? I mean, you obviously arranged it, you made it work, but how did it feel?
Actually, he did all the arrangements because he knew I was not experienced at this. And he said, we're going to start off small. We're just going to do like a long weekend away. And we're going to totally unplug. I just need you to unplug. And I'm like, oh, fucking unplug. But we did. And we went to San Francisco. Wasn't that even far of a trip. And I'd never been. So I was exploring.
Where were you living back then when you went on the first
trip? I was living in California, but Southern California. Okay.
Yeah, still.
So it was about I don't know, hour and a half flight. So we buzzed there and went away for the weekend, and I came back and I go, wow, yes, I had work piled up when I came back, but I felt so relaxed. I was like, oh, this isn't a problem. We got this. And I said, wow, there's something to this vacation thing. There's really
so you had a new feeling.
Yeah. New way of being, right? You don't know till you experience it. And then you come back and you're like, yeah, I got a lot of things to catch up on and get back in flow, as you say, but I feel so much better about it and I don't feel exhausted and it's just wonderful. So that started it. That started my vacations. Wow. And then I took one every single year since then, since my mid-30s.
That's great. And so, I mean, you just shared with me your last vacation on Maui and how beautiful Hawaii is. And I was so close to fly off right now.
I can show you some pictures, then you're really going to want to fly off. It's so wonderful. But this has been my vacation year. So let me tell you about this.
Everybody knows excited
about COVID, right? Everybody knows about COVID. Yeah. And that was, some people described it to me as, well, it's a forced vacation. I go, no, it isn't. This is not a vacation. We're all stuck at home and having to figure out a new way to live and do life. And
yeah,
and so we need vacation after that. Well, we had scheduled vacations for every year because we like to do that. And by the way, my husband discovered, we went on one year on a cruise vacation with our daughters when they were about, I don't want to say 10 years old. And we didn't even know if we liked cruising. And we discovered that we really like it. And what my husband likes most about it is, or did at the time, because I was working for Boeing, he said, you know what I love about cruises? You can't use your BlackBerry.
Exactly.
It has to be locked away in the safe and you have to disconnect. And I said, yeah, that makes it better because I'm not checking in. Oh, let me just go in the corner and check this email real quick.
Yeah.
So and cruises, you have to schedule pretty far in advance. I mean, sometimes you can just jump on at the last minute, but that's not the norm, right? So in 2020, when COVID shut everything down, we had 2 cruises planned that year.
Where to?
One to Hawaii, to around the islands, and one to Alaska, actually.
Wow.
So we were going to 2 really different places. And both of them got canceled, of course.
Yeah.
And then everything that we had planned for that year got rolled into this year automatically. They rolled it forward.
Yeah.
We already had stuff planned for this year. And so this became my year of vacations. Throw on top of that 2 family kind of things we had to travel for. We will have gone on 6 vacations. We have 1 left at the end of this month. 6 vacations this year. One of them was 2 weeks in Maui. So, and when we're looking at the calendar going, oh my gosh, these things got rescheduled and they're kind of, that's a lot of vacations in 1 year. Nice problem to have, right? But we said, well, let's just do it. Let's just see what it's like to do this. I will tell you, I don't want to repeat 6 vacations in 1 year, but I still love vacations.
Yeah. But isn't it interesting how life happens in phases? When you just shared that you got up at 4 a.m. and that you really worked and you really went from project to project, and now you say, hey, I'm retired and now I started my own business and now I have a year of 6 vacations. That's actually totally different, isn't it?
Absolutely different. And you know, I was even coaches still need coaches, by the way.
Yeah.
And so my coach I work with regularly, we were talking yesterday, and we have been working on being, not doing, being.
Do you know the phrase you are a human being, not a human doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's, I need to like put that on a sticky and put it on my computer monitor to remind me all the time.
I have my post-its up here as well.
Yeah. So you know, it's easier said than done, of course,
always.
Right? Like, of course, that makes sense. We're human beings, not human doings. But in reality, we get easily fall into the do, right? And busy work. And so I would say I had this transformational breakthrough while I was on Maui for the last 2 weeks. Of all the vacations we've done, this year, this one was transformational because
no way, this is awesome.
I described it to my coach as I had this win when I had taken some things that I had committed to do with me to Maui and said, maybe I'll be inspired because I'm, you know, at the beach or listening to the ocean waves crash and, you know, just relaxing. Maybe I'll be inspired and I'll work on these things. Well, if you listen to my words, there's the problem right there. I'm going to work on these things because I'm going to be inspired. Again, back to driven Debbie. When I was there, I had my laptop with me and I said, well, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to. And so I locked it in the safe and I never did anything except relax and enjoy myself. And so when I got back, I said to my coach, I think I've had a win because I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I needed to be doing those things. I just made a decision that, nope, I didn't want to, so I wasn't going to do it. And he said, I don't think that's a win. I think that's a transformation to being.
Wow.
And I was like, I think you're right. I think I had a breakthrough. And I still feel that way. It was like, okay, it's all going to be fine. It'll work out.
You know what I love about that story is that, I mean, you know, we were supposed to actually record this podcast, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and then we postponed it to after the Maui trip. And now you just share that story. I mean, that's amazing.
Things happen for a reason. Really, they do.
They do. Yeah.
And coming down with COVID, which while it was no fun at all, I'm kind of glad it postponed our recording this podcast because
Yeah.
I was able to share something amazing in my life.
And that is really awesome. So how would you give somebody else who maybe is really driven as well and has a plan and is super structured, maybe a hint or an advice or an idea or anything to be able to go through this transformation as well?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. And the way you approach them may be different depending on how you're wired. So if you're, as you described, somebody who's really structured and has a plan and really driven, then you're going to want to incorporate these ideas into your plan, right? So that it's something that you actually accomplish. Because people who like to plan and like to accomplish things, if it's part of the plan, they'll make sure it happens, right?
Yeah.
If you're not so driven and not so structured, then do whatever works for you to make this a priority for you. And I would say there's three things, right? One, and the most important one, is taking care of yourself. And that looks different for every single person, right? My niece is a college soccer player right now. She's on the soccer team. And self-care for her, because she's so busy at soccer, morning soccer, afternoon soccer, evening, she sleeps and does it all over again, right? So she's just focused on soccer. And so self-care for her looks like getting a mani-pedi or doing a facial or something like that, just where she can just decompress for a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
Self-care for somebody else might be you give yourself X amount of time each week where you just focus on yourself. I call it me time. And everybody needs me time. It can be an hour, it can be a whole day. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, but make sure you're doing the self-care. Find what works for you and do it. The second thing, and these aren't really in order actually, because they're equally important. You got to set boundaries and you got to honor the boundaries.
How did you manage to honor your boundaries and also tell other people to respect them?
Yeah, it's a process, Patricia, because if you're used to, well, if people expect you to be available all the time, 24/7, because you've trained them that way.
Yeah.
You've answered their texts or emails or phone calls immediately. You've trained them to expect that from you. Oh, I'll get an immediate response from Debbie, no matter what she's doing.
Exactly. And I think that's so important to understand, that we train the people around us. It's not that happened, I don't know, within a day or a week. No, it's something that established over the years, maybe even decades sometimes.
Right. And we didn't even realize we were doing it. Right?
Yeah.
So we were not setting boundaries. We were just saying, okay, it's okay to contact me whenever you want to, however you want to. When you start realizing that, it's like, oh, okay, I'm the problem, so I can change it.
Yeah.
And
which is great, because it's my responsibility.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so what I started doing, baby steps, was I would carve out a couple of periods each day where I would look at my email and respond to it. And I wouldn't respond to it otherwise. Okay. But I started retraining them. You'll hear back from me within 24 hours, but you're not going to hear back from me within 2 minutes, right? It's just not going to work that way. Then the next baby step was I started work boundaries about my work hours, when I was on work and when I was done with work for the day.
How did you manage that? Because I can only imagine, if you have kids and everything else, you have to organize so much stuff. How were you able to keep track and to really be strict on these boundaries?
I would say I wasn't so strict at first, but I was firm on certain aspects of it. It was more of a blend than a balance,
Okay.
between the kids,
That's actually
husband.
great, more a blend than a balance.
Yeah, it was more of a blend because it switches day to day, right? So the
Yeah.
kids may have a science fair that you need to take off work to go to their science fair, and then you come back to work and have to work more that afternoon. So what I did was define, okay, how many hours am I willing to give to my work in a given day? And I already told you I was getting up at 4 a.m. all the time, and I was used to that from a young age, so that wasn't hard. But if I went in the office, I was very careful not to, on my computer and stuff, indicate that I was there, to give me some time of my own. That was one boundary I set, to get organized for the day. Because if I felt organized for the day, then it kind of didn't matter what came at me, I could handle it. Because I knew what I had to do and what could be put off until the next day. And then my leaving time, I set, if all things are normal, you don't have a kid event or this event or that event, if all things are normal, I'm going to leave at this time every day. And I just, sometimes I had to like clench my fists and go, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And then I turn off my computer and I'd leave. Sometimes at first I would find myself, I'm just going to get on my phone and check this one thing. Yeah, right. And I had to enlist help. I had to enlist allies around me to say, look, when you see me getting on my phone when I told you I was done for the day, I want you to call me on it. I want you to say,
and did it work?
For the day? It did. My friends loved it. Actually, they were like, and my husband especially loved it. But my friends were like, didn't you say you were done for the day? Okay, Mr. Irvin, put the phone down. We're partying now. We're doing this. We're doing that.
And how did you react? Were you thankful that they really came up and dared to tell you, hey, come on, stop working? Or were you a little bit more like, come on, let me get on this call and then
I was irritated at first. Irritated. Absolutely. I was like, it's so frustrating. I just need to do this one thing. And they're like, no, you asked us to tell you when you were breaking your own boundaries. And it so helped. And then of course I was thankful, absolutely. But my initial reaction was
maybe in the second
frustration.
way then.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, thank you. I know there's going to be moments when I have to stop myself from throttling you for reminding me what I asked you to remind me. But so
but
setting
it's great
boundaries.
to have such friends.
It is amazing to have such friends. I'll do a little sidetrack here. I always want brutally honest friends. I always want that because I know there's already trust built up, right? I know that they have my best interests at heart, and I don't want them to feel like they have to tell me something they think I want to hear.
Yeah.
I want them to tell me what they're really thinking, even if sometimes it's hard to hear. So, for example, if we go shopping and I'm trying something on in a store and you see it and you think, oh no, she shouldn't be wearing that because that doesn't flatter or whatever, it's a bad color for her, or she's, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I want you to tell me.
Yeah.
I hate it when I go shopping with friends and I spend money on something.
Yeah.
And then I never wear it because it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't look good on me. And I'm like, why didn't you say something? Well, I just thought you really liked it. So I didn't want to, I'm like, no, just be brutally honest with me. And so that's how I feel about like all of this. So taking that into the work aspect and the boundaries, I picked friends specifically that I knew would be brutally honest. I had one friend, she literally reached over, grabbed my phone and slammed it on the other side of the table and said, no, it's off limits. And I said, but what if, she goes, nobody's going to die. You don't have a job where someone's going to die if you don't pick up the phone.
Thing. Exactly. I mean, if you're a doctor, that's something else, right? But
that's a completely different situation.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. But when it comes to work, like you have, or like I do something, like, I don't know, you work from home or in an office or something, usually nobody dies and nothing happens if you respond later or the next day. And for me, when I had my burnout, I realized I'm not the center of the universe, because not everybody's waiting for me and relying on me. And in the first moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not important. And in the second moment, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a relieving. That is awesome, because I can do whatever I want. And I still have my friends and my family, but I am not
It's a weight off your shoulders.
Oh, yeah. And it was so relieving. I remember that transformation day for me as well. I was like, wow, actually, I always wanted to be like a super special or super good or I don't know what. And then I realized, no, that's way more easy just to relax and to enjoy it that way. And it took some time.
Then you can bring you to the world.
Exactly.
You can bring what you're meant to be doing to the world. But you can't do it if you're just like, no, I got to climb that hill and I got to climb it this fast and I got to carry all this weight with me while I do it. And no,
you don't have to.
If you can just drop it all and go, okay, what am I bringing to the situation? And if you are not taking care of yourself, if you are not setting those boundaries, as you know, because you had that burnout and that aha moment, then you're no good to anybody.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's hard to hear as well, because you think, well, but now I need friends and now, no. And I mean, you have friends and of course you have good times, you have bad times. That's totally normal. But I remember when I had my burnout, I decided to go away for a few weeks or actually months to Italy, just to be on my own and enjoy the time by myself and learn how to recharge and learn to be, because, and this was also so important for me, not to be a burden for my friends. And I mean, nobody said anything and they were all prepared and ready to support me. And that was awesome. That was really great. But I didn't want to feel like my feeling. I didn't want to feel like a burden. I was like, that's great. And I'm really thankful, but I need to go away. I need to recharge. I need to get my life straight again. And when I come back, then I'm good friend for, in my opinion, a good friend again. And again, friends are there in good and bad times. It's not that you should leave every time you have a bad day or something. But I felt that it's just too much. And I need to learn to handle it myself first. And then I can come back and share with everybody else and help friends and be there for someone else again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, taking vacations falls in that too, right? Yeah. So you don't want to wait till you burn out to go away.
Totally not.
You don't want to wait till you really need it or past needing it. So scheduling those vacations, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. You know, people say, well, I can't really afford to take vacations, and I'm not like you do. And I said, well, I couldn't always afford to take those vacations either, but you
step by step.
Step by step. And you work with what works for you. Maybe it's you're going to take a road trip, and where you live is so wonderful because relatively short road trips, you can be in a bunch of different countries, right? And you can see lots of different things. Whereas here in the United States, it's a little more expensive. You gotta drive for days.
Yeah.
I live in Texas and you got to drive for 2 days just to get across Texas. So. Yeah, but you can still take trips. You can take whatever kind of trips that works for you, even if it's a staycation. The rules for staycation, though, is the boundaries have to be a lot firmer because it's too easy to get sucked back in. But you know, I'm in fact leaving next week again, and I'm going to go help a really good friend of mine house hunt, and we're going to just have fun with it. We're going to, you know, relax and enjoy ourselves and get something accomplished all at the same time that helps her. So she's like, well, I didn't really get a vacation this year, so this is kind of my vacation combined with, you know, a purpose.
Yeah.
So that's okay. That works too. So it's whatever works for you. Like
there are so
mine
many different
isn't going
ways.
to look like yours, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And there are so many different ways. For example, on my last vacations, I went on a rodeo and horsemanship event, right? And all the other people
How awesome.
it was great, but all the other people were like, was this really relaxed? I'm like, yeah, where was it? Well, in the middle of nowhere in Australia, like really in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so what did you do there? Nothing. There were just horses and me. But yeah, so everyone has their own wishes or yeah, everybody likes something else. And that's the important thing, right? How did you find out what you like and what is helpful for you to recharge your batteries? Was it easy for you or did you try
That's a
out?
great question. Again, I wasn't being purposeful at first because it was kind of foisted upon me by my husband. He was like, okay, we're going on vacation. So
He's great.
we went where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. And then I started getting into it and going, well, that sounds interesting. I kind of like to do that. Or I'd like to do this, or I'd like to go visit this place. I've never seen it. And I want to, and that's how I'm still doing it.
Okay.
So I go on vacations and I don't always know. Sometimes we go back to a place we know we love, like Hawaii.
Yeah.
Hawaii, we love everything about the Hawaiian Islands. But sometimes we just pick a place and say, let's just go check it out. That's how I wound up living in Texas, actually.
No way. Really?
We were living in Seattle and I was still working for Boeing. Hadn't picked where we were going to live because my husband's originally from upstate New York. I'm originally from the Midwest. We both knew we didn't want to go back there. That those were off the table because we said, no snow, we're done with snow. We don't want to have to deal with that. So we said, where do we want to be? We don't know. So we started taking long weekend trips to just go check out the vibe of different places and say, hey, is this something that could work for us? Now, if you talk to the experts, they tell you when you're getting ready to retire, don't pick a place by how it was on vacation, because that's not real life when you're living there, right?
But for you, it worked out.
For us, it worked out fine. But what really worked was my sister has lived in Texas one of my sisters, most of her adult life. And she said, where are you guys thinking about retiring? And I said, oh, we've got quite a few places, but we've narrowed down the list and we've got a few more left to visit. And she said, well, what about Texas? And I go, well, it's not on the list. She goes, well, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if there was family nearby when you retired? Because we kind of all scattered all over the place, right? And as you experienced as well. Yeah. And so I said, well, okay, we'll come check it out. And so we took a long weekend here in the Texas Hill Country and said, this is really interesting. The people are nice. It's, good cost of living.
You have a lot of cowboys and horses.
Yes, lots of cowboys and horses. No shortage of those. Maybe should have worn my cowboy hat for this interview.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And we were flying home from that long weekend event. And he looked at me and he goes, I kind of think that's it. And I go, I do too. So that's how we ended up in Texas. So yeah, we just kind of go with the flow, right? We go someplace. If it sounds interesting to us, we may get there and go, oh no, we don't want to repeat this. This was not a fun trip. Or we may say, oh yeah, let's do this one again. But next time, let's, check this out. So we kind of go.
Where do your daughters live now?
Both of my daughters live in California. But they live in different parts of California. They, one's in grad school for marine biology. And so she lives in the Monterey area of California. And then the other one lives in the LA area because she is in animation production.
Oh, well, this makes a lot of sense.
Good place for her to be, right?
Yeah.
But she's actually she wants to go live in Europe for a year, starting next May. And in fact, I may have her call you about the ways to do that sort of stuff. And right now she's in Egypt because she had a lifelong dream to go visit Egypt. So she's in Egypt.
That is great. Yeah, I mean, happy to catch up and meet her in Europe. That's cool. So talking about your daughters, What was for you the biggest hurdle? Because I mean, I do not have any children, right? So I don't know how to combine work life and kids and private life. But what was the biggest struggle for you with the kids and the career at the same time? And how did you manage it?
Actually, I would say the biggest struggle was those two things, plus back in school trying to get my degree.
Well, okay, yeah, that is really a lot. Yeah.
So I would say what helped the most was having a partner that was willing to, we shared the goals. So his goal was for me to get finish my degree, the same as my goal was to finish my degree, right? So
That's so sweet.
in order for that to happen, he is so wonderful. He's like, okay, I'm just gonna take the kids out for a couple hours so you can get that paper written, or you can study, or you can do whatever it is you needed to do. And otherwise we divvied up duties. So if the girls had to be dropped off at school, like maybe he would take the morning shift and I would take the afternoon shift, or we just divvied everything up. The biggest challenge was I put on myself, because everyone was talking about work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance, right? There's no such thing, in my opinion, as balance. Now, I'm a Libra on the astrological charts, right? So it's about the scales, it's about balance. So I kept trying to achieve that balance, but really that's where it came to me. It's a blend, right?
I love
It's
that.
not always, they're not always going to be in balance, right? You're one day this scales down further, the next day this scales down further. You just don't know what's going to come up. So,
Yeah.
but I was a single mom for a while, and then I married him, and he helped with just so many things because he was willing to support my goals and help me achieve them. I think if I hadn't had that in my life, it would have been even harder. But the other challenge was just reminding myself that we're back to being. This whole thing's about being, right? To be there for them, because to them, they didn't care what I had to deal with at work during the day.
Yeah.
They couldn't even just tell you what I did. One day they got asked at school, describe what your parents do. My mom talks on the phone all day. What?
Yeah.
That's what you think I do for a living?
Kids are so brutally honest.
So I said, okay, well, from their perspective, that is what I do all day, right? So, and they don't care. They just care, am I there for them so they can say, guess what we did in school today? We did this and this and this, or I got my feelings hurt because so-and-so wouldn't talk to me, or whatever it is. But making them the priority when you're with them, right? That was my kind of guiding light on that, was like, okay, I'm the mom, I'm their only mom. So I've just got to be there for them, and everything else is going to have to wait. And there's a perfect story that illustrates this, Patricia. I got an opportunity. We were living in Southern California, and I got an opportunity at work for a promotion and this amazing job that was kind of like the next thing in my goal at the time. But I had to relocate to the middle of the US. And I shared custody of my children with their father. And I would lose custody if I took that job.
Wow. So first of all, before I ask you, how did you solve it, is the question, what did you do? Who did you ask? Who did you talk to? What did you do?
So the very first thing I did was have some me time. I took a bubble bath and I had a nice glass of wine. And I just sat there and thought, and just let the feelings wash across me. It's like, oh, I really want this job. It's such a fantastic opportunity. Now, remember, I didn't have this big goal. I want to be this level and this job. I just was the next thing for me. And it was exciting to me. So I was like, okay, I really want this job. And then I'm like, but is there any way around this dilemma? Because I knew that I would lose custody of them. if I moved them out of state. And I was racking my brain and I just said, you know what? It's okay. I need to put my children first. I'm going to turn down the job. And my husband goes, so how are you feeling about this? And I said, I think I got to turn it down. I just don't see any way clear to do this. And he goes, well, maybe there's some other ways you could do it, or maybe they'd agree to some sort of a part-time there, part-time here kind of a thing, and we could make that work. And I'm like, I just don't know. But with the shared custody, I will say it was usually they were 1 week at my house and 1 week at their dad's. So then I let that germinate overnight, that little seed that got planted. And the next morning I said, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to go in and turn down the job because I can't take it as it's presented. I cannot move to the Midwest. Plus, I kind of didn't want to move back to the Midwest because I was from there. And that, for me, it was always about, oh, where's the next thing I want to experience? But anyway, beautiful people in the Midwest, don't get me wrong, but it's just, it was going backwards for me. So I called the boss and I said, okay, I can't take this job. I'm really sorry. I really want it. I can already see and get excited about the things I would do with this job, this role, but I just really can't because I will lose custody of my children. And that's a do not cross line. I will not risk that. And I said, he goes, oh no, you're the perfect person for this job. We really wanted you. We haven't offered it to anybody else, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, the only way I can see that this could possibly work is if you would agree to let me still live here in California and then fly back and forth like week on, week off. When I didn't have my kids, I would be there. And he said, oh, I don't think that'll ever work. They'll never let us do that. And then he goes, oh, wait a minute. And he kind of talked himself into it while we were on the phone. And he said, let me do some checking. I'll get back to you. And an hour later, he called me and he said, done. Cool. You can stay living in Southern California. You can commute. He goes, it's going to be hard on you physically and emotionally, because you're going to be going back and forth all the time. But he says, but let's try and make it work. And it worked beautifully.
Wonderful.
For years.
Wow. That is the awesome thing, right? You don't need to take for granted what's given to you. No, you can still discuss or at least try to change it, or at least make it anyhow possible for both sides.
Right. And he would have never thought of that. He was just like, nope, this is the job. Take it or leave it. And I'm like, well, I have to leave it then. And we were able to work out a compromise and it worked great. And the kids were aware, but they didn't, think twice about it. They were just like, oh, this is what mom does. She flies out every other week. So
cool. Well, that's a wonderful story to sum up our podcast episode. Debbie, thank you so much. I learned so much about you and your story, and I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Patricia. It's been so much fun to reconnect with you.
Totally. So one last question. Is there any book or any movie you find totally inspirational or you love that everyone should definitely see?
Wow. Well, for me, I'm a in the moment kind of a person. It's like, what am I listening to now? What am I watching? What am I reading?
Yeah.
So movies, no, I haven't been really super inspired by any movies recently, but I'm an avid reader. And in fact, I have, are you aware of Goodreads?
No.
Have you heard of that? It's a, I guess they would call themselves networking thing, but it's for readers, avid readers.
Oh, is it the platform where you can also give like recommendations or feedback on
and you share what books you're reading and what you thought of them and stuff like that. So, but they put out a reading challenge every year, and so you get to pick your own. Like, how many books am I going to read this year? And I've blown mine out of the water the last 2 years, and I've read 92 and 91 books respectively the last 2 years.
Wow.
So believe me when I
lot.
say I read lots of things.
Okay, I see.
Lots of things. But recently, this book came out from Brene Brown.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Atlas
I haven't
of the
read
Heart.
it yet.
I haven't finished it yet, but
Okay.
it was really, really, really wonderful. And there was another one that I just finished reading. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was, here it is. Elevate Your Voice. Elevate Your Voice. And it was a collection of stories written by women, and a coach that I know, it's his wife, and she focuses on helping women live into their potential. And so it was a bunch of stories about how women had to learn to elevate their voice. And I loved that book. In fact, the reason I was looking off camera here is because I have it ready to send to Susan.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Oh, cool. I'm gonna put it in the show notes as well. And Debbie, again, thank you for the great time, for all the insights and everything you shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia.
Das war's für heute. Vom Stresspreneur zum Chillpreneur. Wir hören uns nächste Woche wieder. Mit Tipps, wie du Stress besser verstehst und vor allem, wie du deine Ziele erreichst, ohne dich kaputt zu schuften. Weitere Infos findest du auch auf www.der-chillpreneur.de oder auf Facebook und Instagram @der.chillpreneur.